Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Adverbs Part 4, Adverbs of Time. This video is about adverbs of time, so I think we should begin by asking the question, what are adverbs of time? Well, these adverbs tell us when or for how long something happens or is the case in a sentence. They are similar to adverbs of frequency, which I did in part 1. If you remember, adverbs of frequency answered the question, how often? But in this video, we're going to look at two specific areas of time. The first example we'll look at is an adverb of time that relates to a point in time. In the example, Christina left for Paris yesterday. When did Christina leave for Paris? She left yesterday. All right, that's a point in time. Okay. On the other hand, this next example relates to a relationship in time or a duration of time. So in the example, I've been waiting for her letter for 2 weeks. How long have you been waiting for her letter? For 2 weeks. Okay. How long is it? For 2 weeks. That's a duration of time. Okay, so we have a relationship in time, which is, let's say, a specific time. And then we have a duration of time, like in this example, where it's for a certain amount of time. So in this case, it's for 2 weeks. Okay, you got it? Now let's look at the positioning of adverbs of time. And they are usually placed at the end of a sentence. So in the first example here, Joe walked to school yesterday. Okay, yesterday is a point in time and it's at the end of the sentence. As I said, they're usually at the end. In the next example, Gerard has been teaching English since 2001. Since is at the end of the sentence, okay, the adverb, and it's a duration of time, right? Since 2001. Now, sometimes we place adverbs of time at the beginning of the sentence, and this puts an extra emphasis on the time or the duration of time being described. Now let's use the same examples, but we're just going to put the adverbs in the front of the sentence, okay, in the beginning of the sentence. So in the first example, yesterday, Joe walked to school. So the emphasis on when did Joe walk to school? Yesterday. All right, so it's emphasizing that point in time. And we see the same thing in the next example. Since 2001, Gerard has been teaching English. So how long has Gerard been teaching English? Since 2001. Okay, it's in the beginning. So the emphasis is on the since 2001, that duration of time. Got it? Now let's review a little bit. I've said that adverbs of time usually appear at the end of a sentence or for emphasis at the beginning. But there are a few exceptions to this rule. Here are 3 of them. The first one we'll look at is still. Now, the adverb of time still is used to describe something that is continuously happening. For example, my students are still watching my adverb videos. So in the example, we're talking about something that is continuously happening, right? My students are still watching my videos. We can see the pattern where the adverb is before the main verb here. And if we make a question in the example, is she still washing her car? You see? We still see this same pattern. The adverb is before the main verb in the question. Still can also be used before not in negative sentences. For example, I'm still not sure about attending school next year. You see, it's before not, and the sentence is negative. And finally, still can be used after auxiliary verbs in positive sentences about the future. We might still be able to go to the park tomorrow. Okay, it's after the auxiliary verb might, and it's talking about a positive thing in the future. Got it? Now let's look at another one, later. The adverb later is normally positioned at the end of a sentence to simply mean at a later time. For example, we will go out to eat later. Okay, it just means that later. There's no emphasis on anything. It's just saying at a later time. But if it's placed in the beginning of a sentence, there is an extra emphasis on when the action happened. In the example, later, John found out what grade he got on the science test. So similar to what I talked about before, the emphasis is on that specific time or that point in time later, because it's in the beginning of the sentence. Now, here's where it's a little bit tricky. If it's placed immediately before or sometimes after the main verb, it creates a formal tone to the sentence. In our example, the president later informed Congress about the changes to his foreign policy. Let's say maybe you hear it on the news or you read it in a newspaper, and it's more of a formal way. And you can see where later is before the verb here in this sentence, okay? So that's how you can be a more formal use of it. All right, the last exception that we're going to look at is the word yet. Yet is usually used as a conjunction. Remember fanboys? Okay? But when it's used as an adverb, it's used primarily in negative sentences or in questions, like in our examples. We can see the negative use in our first example. Gloria hasn't taken her driving test yet. Okay, it's a negative sentence. And in the next example, we have the question, right? Have you eaten dinner yet? Okay, you see how they're used in a negative and in a question. Now, yet can also follow the word not before the main verb in a negative sentence. For example, she has not yet finished her homework. Now, that's a very formal use of this, but you can use it like this. And finally, yet can also be used after auxiliary verbs and before the main verb in positive sentences to talk about a future possibility. For example, Stan might yet be able to make a deal with Roger about buying his car. All right, you see where it is? It's right after the auxiliary verb might, and it's before the main verb be able to. All right, it's saying that there's a good chance about a future thing happening, like making a deal here in this sentence. Now we're going to look at for and since, and these two adverbs of time are used for duration. This duration is what we've been talking about, right? It's the length of time. In our example, she has been working on her essay for 2 hours. Now, when we use for, we use it with a word or words that specify a length of time, the duration of time. It's for 2 hours. But with since, in our example, I've had trouble with my car since last week. All right, since last week is a specific point in time. Remember points in time? All right, and that's how we use those two adverbs for duration. Okay, that's all for this video. Adverbs Part 5 will be coming up next. I hope this series has helped you. Thanks again for subscribing, and remember what I always say, keep practicing. See you next time.